Hello, this is Rick Powers coming to you from my home office for Western Technical College. And I'm going to introduce the topic of probability today. Probability. It deals with the idea of uncertainty when you don't know what's going to happen. But there's also another sense. There are different senses of probability. One of them is the long term percentage of an event. For example, if you've ever played Yahtzee, you have a bunch of dice, you roll the dice, it's not very likely that you'll get all sixes at a time or something like that. And so then if you were to do that 1,000 times and find out how many times that happened, that would be one possible measure of probability. But it can also be a bit more subjective than that. Like under these conditions, we would expect this thing to happen a certain number of times, percentage times, in the long term. Now that's a possible way of understanding it, but just the idea that something might happen, but we don't know for sure. When we're talking about a chance event, that's really what probability is about. Certainly, if you played Monopoly or any other kind of dice game, you know what that's like. It also happens in sports, right? You don't know who's going to win, but certain people have decided under certain conditions that this team has a certain percentage chance of winning. That would be a possible probability idea. But then the big deal comes when we talk about what things can happen in order to change a probability. For example, exercise. If a person exercises, will that change the probability of them having certain diseases or certain conditions or even mortality? Are they going to live longer if they exercise a certain way? Uh, the internet is full of different people who will say, well, if you do this, you'll be more likely to be healthy, whatever that means, right, in that situation. And so then changing probability requires us to really understand what goes into events which are uncertain, which we don't know for sure what's going to happen. Um, think, for example, about car insurance. How does that work? Well, the insurance company has to decide what things will change the probability of someone getting an accident or getting hurt or hurting someone else, right? And so they have different ways of keeping track of that. And then they charge you based on that, right? If you're younger, they might have higher insurance rates because that's a thing that might affect your probabilities of having some kind of an accident. And then we think about all kinds of safety considerations, right? So that if you're, for example, building a staircase, are there certain things that you need to have there for safety that would add to the probability of someone being safe? Food safety, right? Uh, Restaurants have certain standards that they have to maintain for food safety because that would, if you have a certain thing would happen, that would cause a probability that someone's going to get sick or something else, and then you're going to say, well, okay, we need to have food safety and digital safety, right? Boy, that's a big question about how safe is our information. I was just talking to someone about this. It's like, well, what if this person isn't using the most up to date computer? Are they compromising their safety? Well, that's a probability question, right? The chances of that happening. And then the question would be, what are the chances that someone will try to exploit an old computer in order to make money off of it? And so there's all kinds of situations where certain behaviors or certain types of software would have a higher chance of being um, available for someone to break into or something like that. And so then in our class, right, in statistics, what we're going to be talking about are numbers that change. And when we have numbers that change, we don't always know what's going to happen. And so then we want to have tools to understand what are the possibilities, what are the probabilities. And then we're going to be making decisions based on those things which we can measure in terms of what we think might happen. And so then there's this idea of human limitation, right? All of us being human beings, at least I'm a human being, but all of us being human beings, and we say, well, we're limited. We don't know everything. And so then we need to manage that in the sense that I can't always know about information that comes to me if I should rely on it or not. And so then there's an element of statistics, which is really informational, where we say this is the information that we're going to present in order for someone to make a good decision. And so then that information, we would put it in sense of probability. We're pretty sure about something. But we also have to recognize when we're not sure. And we would be skeptical of people who present us information and we don't believe the sources that they have, or their evidence is not good, things of that nature. And so then we have this balance between being certain of things and also being skeptical of things. And so we need to create that as we do statistics, when we present the information, that we would also have some skepticism about our own sources of information, why we believe certain things about the situation, but yet we might have some certainty where we can say, from this evidence, it seems clear that this thing will cause this to happen, or whatever we're getting for a conclusion. All right, probability. It's a strange topic, especially for people who are used to math that always has one answer. And in statistics, it's just not that way. So certainly, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And best wishes on your journey through probability.